Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Mad Scientist Podcast. Today, we decided to do a special episode where I will be interviewing one of my friends, Rob Kristoffersen, who I actually met through the Astonishing Research Corps on Astonishing Legends, and since then, we've been kind of working together on some cool UFO writing stuff, and, you know, he's a big supporter of the show and just a great guy. He's got some really interesting stories, so I thought this would be a really fun episode, a really fun interview to do. So, Rob, say hello to all the people.
Hello, people. How are you?
Hello, people. Although I think you've been doing podcasts longer than I have, so maybe I should be. Maybe you should be running this thing. I don't know if I'm as good at.
It's a learning process. We're learning as we're going along.
Right. That's what everyone tells me. It's like talking to Scott and Forrest, and they're like, "Yeah, we're still learning." It's like, you guys are still learning? What? No, you're not. You guys have perfected the craft, man. Like, listen, I'm still learning. I'm doing this with you should have seen the noise cancellation thing I had. I made it with pantyhose and a piece of cardboard and some nickel wire. It was hilarious.
Dude, you're like Apollo 13ing that shit.
I'm telling you, I really am. It's going completely ridiculous. Welcome to the Mad Scientist Podcast. Today's episode, an interview with Rob Kristoffersen. So, Rob, tell us about yourself. Tell us about what you do, your podcasts, and tell us about yourself, man.
So I live in the Adirondack Park of northern New York. I don't have the greatest job. I have a pretty mundane job. I do the laundry at it's a retirement home, a large retirement home.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. So, pretty mundane life, but a lot of weird stuff happens, especially in the town that I live in right now. But I've got two podcasts. I do two podcasts. It's kind of crazy, just recording a lot. But I do a wrestling podcast called The Turnbuckle Binge.
Nice.
And basically, the premise there is we take a series of wrestling and we binge it, and then we comment on it. So, like, we just watched 33 WrestleManias and recorded about 33 hours of content. So if you really want some entertainment, there's some out there for you.
That is extreme, man. Holy crap.
Yeah, we were ambitious. We were really ambitious.
You were super ambitious. Jesus. 33 WrestleMania. Dude, so it's funny. I always see all these, like, really cool looking wrestling podcasts out there. And so I was really, like, me and my friends had built so first off, there was a patch of grass right across the street from my house when we grew up, and so we used to go wrestle on that, and just whatever, like little kid wrestling stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
And that resulted in many a hard turn to heel status for some people on the block, So oh man, some of those kids really, dude. But then like I had a couple of friends that were like, they were my friends too, but they were kind of like, they didn't live in my neighborhood. My mom was friends with their mom from like when they were really little. And so, we used to drive over there and I'd hang out with them all the time too. And they had like, some of the older kids in their neighborhood had built like a legit backyard wrestling ring.
Oh,
right.
Damn.
And it was so, we were like I think we were probably 10 or 11 when that happened. So obviously we weren't getting in there and like smashing each other with chairs or anything, but it was pretty badass.
Yeah, it definitely sounds badass.
Yeah, but the thing, and it was made with, I think it was probably made with mattresses, which now looking back, I'm like, I can't believe we didn't get bed bugs or something really gross, or like, I can't believe I didn't come home with pink eye more often than I did. So, it was a good time. There was a lot of fun. And since then, like, actually, as I was cleaning up today, so I just moved to Minnesota from New Hampshire. I just made the big move, finally, to start after the PhD is done and everything. So I'm finally back with my cats again, which is just phenomenal. And when I was moving books out from, like the storage boxes, and when we were moving, I was moving boxes out, and two of my favorite books are two of the books, I think he wrote 3, that Mick Foley wrote about his career and his time wrestling.
Yeah, those are amazing.
There's the first one I think was just called Mankind, and then the next one was called Foley is Good. And they're so good.
They are. He's a hell of a writer. Just really great writer.
I'm telling you, if one little change over in what his favorite high school class was, it sounds like he could have been a writer.
Yeah,
for sure. He was super great. Yeah, and so I was really into it then, like with Mick Foley and The Rock and Steve Austin and everything. And I think I kind of stopped watching. I guess I stopped watching around that time too, but I've been off and on though since then as well. Like one of my really good friends in college, him and his buddies used to have, like, whenever, I guess it was Monday night, right? They would watch Raw.
Yep.
And they would just get plastered and watch wrestling. And so I'd often get drunken texts from him like, "Man, wrestling is so good still, you should check it out." And it's like, dude, I don't have the time. I don't know if you know what I mean, but it seems a lot of fun though. It definitely seems cool. I should check out some of the wrestling podcasts though. If Mick Foley ever did one, I don't know if he does one actually.
No, he doesn't do one right now, but like I think because he just did a stint on Raw as their general manager, and he had to step away because he finally had to have hip surgery. So,
okay.
I mean, it would be perfect for him to do because there are a lot of people, a lot of former wrestling talent that have podcasts. Chris Jericho, Steve Austin, all those guys. So I think eventually down the line he needs one.
Yeah, I would absolutely listen to that. Honestly, it's so funny. I saw the Steve Austin one, and I was thinking to myself, if it's anything other than him, like the noises of him in Steve Austin character, like straight Stone Cold Steve Austin. If it's not just him drinking beer, like I can hear the can crack open, and then just a minute of him like gurgling, and then it coming back, and he's like, "Yeah," I think I'll be upset. That's really what I need to hear on my way to work every morning.
Oh, all the time. Get you psyched up for that for that day job. Oh yeah,
right, that day job. Anyways, all right, so. Yeah, we're a wrestling podcast now. That just happened. So tell us about your other one.
We just launched a new podcast called Maddie in Progress, and the guy I co-host the Turnbuckle Binge with, his name is Maddie, and as he likes to say, he's a work in progress. So basically, myself and a friend of his, we basically try to give him dating advice and help him navigate the world of relationships.
Nice.
So, and
that's probably hard.
Yeah, it's got to be real hard for him. So, and our first episode just launched, and it's so entertaining. We basically help him build an online dating profile. So, Maddie in Progress. Check that out.
Phenomenal. That sounds good.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I have friends that are now like, I guess, I don't want to say coming to me for dating advice because that's definitely not what anyone should do.
No.
But, no, what do you mean, Rob? No.
I'm kidding.
What do you mean by that, man?
I've been married for almost 9 years, and I every time somebody comes to get advice from me, I tell them I am the absolute worst person to get advice from.
Well, that's the thing. Me and Katie have been together since high school, right? So it's kind of like, I never really dated, right?
Right.
And so I kind of just found the perfect person, kind of fell into my trap, I guess. And I got really lucky.
You put a trap out there?
I'm not going to say it wasn't a trap, but. Well, I mean, depends. How do you define trap, Rob? I mean, really, it's just really funny that, I think we both feel like we got super lucky just finding the right person, whatever. And so when people come up to, I have friends that are like, man, how did it happen? Like, what do you say is the thing to a long-term relationship? And it's like, just be extremely lucky. I have no idea. I could very well be single, eating pizza every night and playing video games, I don't know. I don't know how it happened, but it was very lucky that it did.
Yeah, right? It's just, fate right there. It just happens.
It's fate. So tell us then. So this kind of interview started as an option even because we were talking about weird experiences that we've had, or actually, I was talking about my lack, I guess, of weird experiences, or not really lack necessarily, but sort of my personal belief that anything that would be considered weird that I've had as a kid or whatever was probably just the result of me having a really bad fever, right? Where, like, just really, because I still, and this seems to surprise people. I don't know why. I guess you don't really realize. It's sort of that interesting existential question where you don't really realize how different other people perceive the world or have, say, different experiences of dreams or imagination or whatever. Even the thinking process itself is very specific to every person, I feel like, despite, so many philosophers that would like to think that they're, built from biology or whatever.
Right.
It's... I've always had very, very vivid dreams, and I didn't realize that was different for other people until kind of college, I guess, when I started, sharing a room with someone who, would be like, I'd wake up and say, oh man, I had a really weird dream last night, and they were like, well, I don't really have dreams, Or I was surprised when I got to college even that I met a friend who doesn't have, like, is tone deaf, is like literally tone deaf, to the point where he can't pick a song out from like a line of songs.
Wow.
Yeah, which is amazing, right?
Right.
And so it was like, what's your favorite song? And he was just like, I don't have one. Like, I just don't have one. Like, it's not part of my thing, right? And anyways, so yeah, a lot of my experiences I've kind of boiled down to say, probably a weird dream or whatever, or they're things that have, they haven't ever had any kind of, I guess, effects to me on the point where I've been like, well, maybe it was something weird, right? But you have had some very serious experiences, at least in my estimation.
Yeah, since about the age of 6 or 7, and it's like it kind of comes in waves and stuff like that. But the strangest thing I think about it is like they're so varied. They're not, you can't easily just lump it in as, oh, I experience like the ghostly phenomenon all the time, or I experience the UFO sightings. It's like all of it.
Right, it kind of all comes around and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's very interesting. So obviously we're a show that, we have scientists in the damn title, right? So we're very, I suppose, I don't want to say clinical because that makes it sound like, I'm investigating you with gloves on or something, Rob.
Right.
You know what I mean? That would be weird.
Hey, dude, easy with the touching, okay? Just easy. Thank God you got gloves on.
Thank God I have gloves on, at least. They're nitrile gloves. They're safe to all kinds of chemicals.
Oh, those are good ones.
So they're really good. They're the best kind.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I think that there is a difference between, say, taking someone's sincerely held belief, or maybe I should say not sincerely held belief necessarily, but more like an experience that someone claims that they've had, right? And listening to that experience and hearing about it and learning from it, or just learning about it, as opposed to, say, taking it apart versus, I guess, taking in everything, right? Or believing everything and then using it to move forward. I think there's sort of a difference between, and I think this is an important difference, and it's really one that people always ask me, you're a scientific, you have a scientific job, you've done science, whatever. You're kind of a clinical or maybe not clinical, rational-minded person. So why do I have books on my bookshelf that are things like, transcendental magic and crap like that, right?
Right.
And the answer is that it's really interesting, right? Mm-hmm. There's always very interesting things, and where do you draw the line between, say, philosophy, right, where you have people say, claiming that there's, the real world is not the real thing. It's these physical objects aren't really what we're living in. What we're living in is within our minds, right? Mm-hmm. Versus, say, someone basically making similar claims, but just saying them in a way that is more modernized or more set to kind of, I guess, the technology of the time. So So, anyways, I just want to make it clear to our listeners, when Rob here is talking about his experiences and stuff, I think it's really great, and I really love hearing about them. And I think we should be respectful.
Absolutely.
I think we should, yeah. You know what I mean? It's just important. Anyways, go ahead, Rob. So from the time you were 6 or 7, you've had experiences of all kinds, basically.
Yeah, the first one I distinctly remember was Christmas Eve. Around 6. Well, it was around 6 or 7, and it's around 10 o'clock at night, and I get up, and we live in the top floor of this apartment building, and I'm just going to the bathroom. Just have to go to the bathroom, and when I come out of my bedroom, I walk right by the set of stairs that you'd walk up to get to the top landing. They'd go, down and out, and like the apartment we lived in was it was already 100 years old by the time we moved in, and the door hardware was old as crap, and it didn't like to stay in very well. The door never seemed to stay closed very well. But my downstairs neighbor would always, close the door for us if, she was coming or going. And I was walking to the bathroom, and I looked down, and you could see, the lights were off, but you could see down in the hallway light from, underneath the door. And you could see the door, starting to close really slowly, and I thought that was weird because you couldn't see a shadow, any shadow cast underneath the door. It was just straight light, and it was closing real slowly. I didn't think anything of it. I just went to the bathroom and walked back and into bed. And maybe it was a couple minutes later, and I could see, because it was, what I saw was, it was darker than the darkness. That's the easiest way to describe it. But it was this short, 3 foot tall. The only way I could describe it, and I think it may be colored because of how old I was, but it looked like a lawn gnome, like those garden gnomes that you put in in your gardens. That's what it looked like to me. And
did it have a fishing pole?
No, it did not have a fishing pole.
Okay, all right. So not a gnome then. Gnomes are known to carry fishing poles.
Yes.
Anyways, okay, continue. So it was a small. So you're saying you saw it. You kind of saw it You're saying you saw the solid object in the shadow.
Yes.
And it was about 3 feet tall. And when you say it reminds you of a gnome, did it have a pointed head, or is it just the height? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. Yeah, its head came to a point. And, I don't remember anything after that. I just remember going to sleep and then waking up the next morning, opening up presents.
Weird.
Yeah, it's really, really, really weird.
Now, so looking at it now, so 2 things kind of stand out to me, right? Number 1, how often when I was a kid, I used to sleepwalk all the time, and even now, as an adult, sleep apnea runs in my family, right? Really bad. I don't know why, the mix of Italian and Canadian genes make for really shitty sinus passageways, I guess, right? Yeah. And so, anyways, at nighttime, breathing, sometimes for members of my family or whatever, it can be pretty hard. It can be pretty labored. And so I know, for instance, my dad used to basically, for a couple of months before he was officially diagnosed with sleep apnea, was hallucinating an owl at the window at night. Right? And I remember as a kid being shit. It's the aliens. It's happened, right? I just remember being because the idea that your parent is he's not getting enough oxygen to his brain. It's fine,
right?
That didn't cross my mind. So I'm always very on the lookout for that, and that's one thing that always strikes me with say UFO abduction cases where they say, and you're not claiming that you've been abducted. You're just saying you saw something, but you don't know either way, really.
Right.
Which is actually even scarier, Rob. And I'm very in awe of your stones, as they say.
Yeah.
But so the thing that I find really interesting, like I was saying, was with families that seem to. It seems that abduction runs in families, right?
Yeah.
If you look, I guess, at the history of it, it really does seem to run in families, and so I find it, and that's true of a lot of paranormal things, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see that it kind of runs in families, and that partially to me suggests that it has some physiological explanation, right?
Yeah.
So in my family, we've never really discussed this, I guess, as a family, but in my family, I would not be surprised to find out that I had relatives who claimed to have seen ghosts or aliens or whatever, and it just turns out that they don't know that their brain isn't getting enough oxygen, right? They're snoring really bad. They wake up and they misremember, right? So there are times where Katie will even wake me up, and I won't remember the next morning that we had a minute and a half conversation where she's just like, oh, like you're snoring really bad, and I was like, oh yeah, put a pillow under my head, right? And then it's fine. But
Yeah.
I'm making it sound way worse than it is. But anyways, I'm gonna get letters from fans like, go to a doctor. I've been to a doctor. Don't worry. The what's the word? Hypochondriacism is also runs in my family quite strongly. Do not worry.
Right.
Anyways,
I've had those kind of hallucinations where you're halfway between sleep and
Right.
and then all of a sudden you get jolted up. And there was one time I was just about nodding off, and then something woke me up, and I just see this hand and this arm just cross over me and then pull back. I'm like, oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, I as a kid, right after I saw Jumanji for the first time, the first of many times, let me say as well, I had a dream where I was laying in bed. It wasn't a dream. I was laying in bed, and what I dreamed was that the spiders from Jumanji were crawling up the bed.
Oh, God.
And I was kind of halfway between awake and asleep, and so when I woke up, I was like, shit, was that... Because everything was right in the dream, right? It's one of those ones where it's like, everything is correct, and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, the Jumanji spiders were here last night. I need to find physical evidence, right? Or even, people always say this to me, and I've done this too, where you wake up and, so I used to sleep as an edgy teenager, like all good edgy teenagers. I slept in the basement of my mom's house, where I had all my punk rock posters and my beat up bass guitar and everything, and my band practiced there. So, as an edgy teenager, one time, or a couple of times actually, I would get home so tired, and I'd fall asleep right after school, and then I'd wake up and look at my clock, and it would say 6 o'clock, but I'm in the basement, so it's dark, and I just immediately assumed, oh shit, I slept all night, and I'm late for school.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you get dressed because all my clothes are in the basement and everything and whatever, and I'm running out the door, and it's nighttime, and I look like an idiot. But anyways, okay, so you're saying you have had those experiences, and it was not one of those sort of experiences in your estimation.
Right.
Okay. So did anything come from that? Did you ever think the connection might have been that it was Christmas, right?
Yeah,
what you're describing sounds like an elf.
Like even when I was young, that's what I assumed. I'm like, oh, hey, that's got to be one of like Santa's elves or something.
Right. That's great. Yeah. That's a very interesting. Very interesting. The thing that I think is really cool with some of these cases as well is, not to get too off track again, but the thing that I find very fascinating with these is so you read books like The Mothman Prophecies, or even what was that guy's name in The Mothman Prophecies, the main abductee? The hell was his name? Woody.
Oh,
Woody
yeah, Woodrow
Derenberger.
Derenberger. Yeah.
Right. You read his book, and in his book, a lot of the aliens have, his book's a little bit out there, let's say that, as far as possible. But I find it fascinating when, like, Keel points out, John Keel, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies, for those listeners at home, points out that some of the aliens that seem to contact people have the same names as other ones that have contacted people on the other side of the country, right? So I think one that's common is Apple, right? APOL.
Yep.
Apple seems to contact multiple people. So I wonder if anyone have you ever looked into if someone else has had an experience like that, where they see I mean, those stories of elves or gnomes must come from somewhere, right?
The only story that I have ever found that is anywhere close, and the source is questionable, but maybe 6 years ago, Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures published a book, and he talked about how when he was little, he would see what looked like. I think the best way to describe it is that that bunny from Donnie Darko, and it would be
okay.
and it would be like opening the drawers of his dresser and like looking in stuff, and I'm like, that's just weird. Like that's weird, but I'm like, I mean, what happened to me wasn't a repeat thing. It just happened once. But according to him, it was a repeat thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's hear more. Give me another.
So from there, the next honest experience I remember having when I was like 14 or 15. And my sister just moved out of our house. I just moved into her bedroom, and my bed was facing the window. And there was one night I looked outside, and you could see this light. And what it would do is it'd blink on, and then it would blink off, and then it would appear in another spot, blink on, blink off, appear in another spot. And it kept doing this for like maybe 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden I just go to sleep like it's no big deal. And it was maybe like a couple weeks later, and like Unsolved Mysteries was big in my house. We watched it every week. And
sure, yeah, mine too. Yeah. Yep.
And you were pretty sure that Robert Stack was like dead the whole time that he was hosting that show, like he was a ghost. So, but
are you telling me he wasn't? I need to change the format of the show. That's not good. The whole premise of this damn thing.
I know. Okay. I'm sorry. I know. I ruined it. But I remember there was an episode. It was like a rerun, and I think they were showing the episode about the Allagash abductions. And if nobody's familiar with that, I think they took place in Maine. And these four guys, they were in a canoe, and they were out in the water, and they got abducted by aliens. They had like screen memories put in, so the last thing that they remember is they see this light, and then all of a sudden they're on shore, and they do the whole hypnotic regression and stuff, and they find out that they were abducted. They showed their artist drawings of these aliens, and I never had a reaction to them before, but like after seeing that light that one night, I flipped out. Like I freaked out. Yeah, when I saw the pictures, like the drawings of them, so freaked me out.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of weird, but I just kind of shrugged it off. Like it was nothing.
Sure. So, okay, interesting. So for those that don't know, the drawings of the Allagash abductions are kind of I guess they're the kind of the classic gray alien, right? With the long face and the big eyeballs. Some of these drawings, when I was a kid, I actually distinctly remember one of these. Now that I've looked them up again to see them, you're describing them. I actually remember seeing this one where there's three aliens in spacesuits, kind of looking at. So one of them is looking at two naked guys on a bench.
Yep.
Who are sitting there, and then the other one is the naked person on the table. And I remember as a kid looking in my book on UFO stuff and finding that and thinking that it was something my mom shouldn't see. Mm-hmm. So I kind of hid the book. For like, I was like, oh, this book on aliens is really good. Oh no, what the hell is this? Oh, she's going to take this thing away from me. This is the same mom that like bought me an Eminem CD when I was 8 or something because she thought the beat was good. I don't know any of the words, but the beat is great. Listen to this guy jam, man.
Hey, your mom sounds awesome.
What's he saying about his mom? Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm telling you. So, all right. So that's really interesting. And so, any other experiences with those same? So you're saying, so what you're suggesting or hinting at least is that potentially the reason you had such a strong reaction to this drawing was that you also had experienced something with those kind of beings.
It possibly. I've never had like nightmares. I'm one of those people that does not remember dreaming that often. The last dream I ever remember being like really vivid was this dream that I had with Anne Frank, and I'm not going to get into the details because it got really weird. It was one of those dreams where you felt like you weren't like having a dream, you were talking to somebody, like having a physical conversation with somebody.
Okay.
And that was like 5 years ago.
Weird.
But yeah, like dreams are not something that really, resonate with me. They just don't stick around for whatever reason.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm.
All right. And so what about, so you had told me about a very interesting experience that you had with a gray alien, basically.
Yeah. It started a couple weeks before that experience. I was at work. A buddy of mine, coworker, he's like, "Hey, you want to go outside?" You know, he was going out in the smoke break and just get some air. And we're just out there, shooting the shit pretty much. And it was a clear August day. It was really nice out. And we just start talking. Then all of a sudden I look up and I see this object. It's maybe less than 1,000 feet in the air. Basically, the best way to describe it, it looks spherical. It looked like an egg. And the weird thing was like, it wasn't metallic. It had an off-white color. And it was like moving parallel to us. And we're both just staring at it. And then when it makes it to where we are, it turns very slowly. And this thing was moving like really, really slow. And it turns and it was heading like east. And then all of a sudden it turns and then it just heads north really slowly. It was really weird, but like I think the weirdest thing about it is I didn't have my cell phone on me at the time to take a picture of it. But if I did have it, I don't think I'd want to take a picture of it. I just didn't have the desire to take a picture of it. I'm just like looking at this thing and it's there. And I don't think it should be.
But you didn't have the urge, or say, maybe not the urge, you didn't have the conscious thought, oh, I should take a photo.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So, fast forward, it's a couple weeks later, I'm at work, and like I get to work early. It's usually around like 4 a.m, and I'm in my routine, and like the building I work in is supposedly haunted on 2 different floors, and I've heard stories because it used to be an old hospital, and this is morbid.
Mm-hmm. I always wonder on those ghost shows, why don't they go to more nursing homes?
Right.
It seems like a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. I guess they say that the place where you're going to be, and I don't want to say this negatively either, because a lot of nursing homes are fantastic, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think my mom would honestly love a nursing home. I'll never say that to her face, but if you disguised a nursing home as a cruise ship,
yeah,
you have to go on the water, really, right? Could just kind of have like a buffet. Listen, you put my mom in a nursing home in Florida with a buffet, a pool, and like 24-hour tech support, and she would be in heaven.
Right.
Right, really. I mean, and it's true, though. Like, same with me, man. I think I would, frankly, I mean, I'm sure when I get older, I'm going to be like, fuck that. I want to still, whatever, I'll still be skateboarding and recording my podcast and being a cool guy, right?
Yeah.
But, nah. But when I'm 80, I'm sure I will probably need a nursing home. Because I am not taking great care of my body, Rob. Just not taking great care of it. Waiting for the robot body transformation. Waiting for science to
I've been praying for that thing for so long now.
We're just waiting. So, anyways, we're very off topic. So, okay, so your building is supposedly haunted. You come in at 4 a.m, previously, how soon the last day before, or just a week or so before?
It's about a week or so.
About a week or so. Okay. And I'll have plenty of questions on that other thing too. I got a whole list of written down.
Yeah.
But continue telling your story.
So yeah, I'm just nobody like where I work is pretty isolated. I don't see a lot of people. Sometimes people come down just to there's a door right outside where I am, and nobody's there. I'm just folding laundry and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden I see out of my peripheral vision this shape, and it looks humanoid. It's definitely there. And, you know, I can make out some features. It's not very tall. It's maybe 3.5, 4 feet tall. It's got this really weird, like, creamy colored skin. And or at least what I presume to be skin, and it looks like it's wearing an outfit. Like they described them wearing like blue coveralls all the time, and that's what it looked like it was wearing. And I turned for a second, and I saw this thing for maybe half a second, and those freaking eyes I will never forget because they scared the shit right out of me. Like okay. I ran outside when that happened. It freaked me out.
Okay, so describe the eye. So what you saw then, and how big were the eyes? Describe this thing a little bit in more detail. You're saying it was 2.5 to 3 feet tall.
More 3 to 3.5. Like it wasn't.
Okay.
But like,
so it was small, but not like. So it was like the size of a toddler. Let's say toddler to whatever.
Yeah.
Short third grader.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's about that size. How heavy would you say it was?
Oh, that thing had to be light because it didn't look like it had like muscle mass to it almost.
It didn't have any muscle mass. Okay. So, and it looked like it had, you said, creamy colored skin.
Yeah, definitely like a creamy chalky colored skin.
Did you notice any hair, any follicles, any pores?
No, this thing was hairless.
So, and the skin itself, what I mean by the follicles or the skin itself, did it look like it had texture, or did it look like it was sort of a single material?
Honestly, it looked like it had a rough texture to it. Like if I went to touch it, it looked like it would have like rough touching skin.
Okay, so almost kind of like a eggshell.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep going back to we're using the egg thing a lot here.
But I know what you're getting at.
Kind of like an eggshell or like a painted wall.
Mm-hmm.
But a little bit rougher than that, say. Did it have any dimples, any like raised edges, or it was just smooth?
It was pretty smooth, honestly.
Pretty smooth. Okay. And you only saw it for a half of a second, right? So the thing, this is always, I think, fascinating with, this is the thing that's really hard with, so full disclosure, Marie and I are working on and I don't know if I should even say this on the air yet, or Marie will kill me. We're working on a longer series of episodes that'll be almost like, I guess, like a long-term story arc, right? And we'll probably release them separately from the main show. And so what we're thinking of doing is putting them out kind of over time or something, and we're not really sure how it'll go, but it's based off of a not very well-known but really complicated and complex series of abductions and alien experiences in a town, in a northern town in America. And it's real. When I say it's not detailed at all, it is like I'm talking like maybe 2 or 3 websites have even talked about it at all. And the reason is that, frankly, the UFO, I don't want to say establishment like big UFO or whatever, but the kind of the UFOlogy community, or ufology, how do you say that, Rob?
Ufology.
Ufology. I should have known that. I watch a lot of, I've been reading about this stuff forever, and it's like one of those words. It's like Euler. There's this mathematician whose name is Euler, and half of your math department will say Euler, and the other half will say Euler, and you'd never know how to actually say it. And so on your first day of teaching differential equations or advanced math or something, you're like, well, now I have to pick one. And I guess I'm committing to this. This is how all of my students will say it this way until they come to another class and someone's like, you don't say it like Euler, you say it like Euler. Anyways, the story is it's not very well known, and the reason is that the person came to be known as something of a kook kind of in his later life.
Mm-hmm.
But really, and the reason that we're doing it is more because of how interesting his story is, right? It's kind of a very I find this person fascinating, and so we're probably not going to have any real info about aliens or anything in it, but it'll be really interesting and fun, I hope.
It sounds like a good time. I can't wait to listen to it. You know?
And we'll do a lot of science. We'll talk a lot of science. Don't worry, fans of the science part of the Mad Scientist podcast. But the thing that I always think is really important in any of these cases, or any of these experiencer phenomena kind of things, is just how bad people are at remembering things.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you always see those videos on YouTube where it's, you watch and they're like, okay, look for whatever, right? Or, just watch this video and then afterwards there'll be a quiz. Instead you're watching like people jumping on a trampoline or something. And then at the end it's like, did you notice the elephant walking in the background? And you never do. And the elephant is always right there and you're like, oh crap. Right? So or even I saw one where it showed like a quick video of a crime, and then afterwards it was like, okay, well, describe the assailant, and like I couldn't, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, he was wearing a red shirt, and like instead he actually had red pants on or something. You know what I mean? There's just all these discrepancies you make. But so anyways, so if I'm asking like very hard questions, if you don't know, just say I don't know, right? I mean you know that anyways. But the other point that I was trying to get to was the idea of leading questions, right? So when you first told me this, I think one of the first questions I asked you was, did you notice a smell? Right?
Yeah, right.
And the reason is that you can tell our noses are a lot more fine-tuned to chemicals than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's really like a lot of info you can get from the smell around, say, even like a chemical spill or something, right? If it smells sweet, it's probably an aromatic hydrocarbon. If it's, there's a lot of different kind of chemical things you can rule out just by smell.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you should be smelling chemicals anyways, frankly, usually.
I work in a laundry room. We have plenty of chemicals to smell.
right. You have plenty of things. But anyways, but when I asked you that afterwards, I was like, shit. Even now with the skin thing, right? It's like, if you hadn't thought of that before and now I told you, right? Now you're thinking about it, and maybe we've just introduced an incorrectness. Do you know what I mean? Or
right.
It stayed out to you at the time, then why am I prying about it? Or why am I injecting a possibility where the possibility before wouldn't even have been there? And I'm always struck. So in part of the quest for this story was actually us reaching out to people who considered themselves experiencers in the area where this bigger story took place. And in my first interview, I completely have to throw away because, and we're probably not going to do that, many of them, frankly, anymore, because I'm really bad at them. I lead people, and I don't mean to. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's a very hard thing, and it's something that I think is not usually. It's something, for the listeners, it's something as simple as interjecting something like, well, what was the texture of the skin, right? It's something as simple as that, because that actually cuts off a lot of possible evidence that is really there that we're no longer considering.
Right.
Anyways, so those are the kind of, those are scary, man. I'm scared, Rob. I'm scared for you, bro. You
that's the thing. I've never been scared. I've never honestly been scared. And here's the thing. In the town that I live in, this town is really strange because I live, to give you kind of idea of where I live about 20 miles from Lake Placid, and people know Lake Placid is where the Miracle on Ice occurred. And they believe me, it's a tourist trap now. But
Okay.
I mean, it's not really that bad, but it's a very touristy town now.
Okay.
But I live about 2 towns over, and the thing about the town I live in is it used to be kind of it was a job center. We had a factory. It ended up shutting down, because it's cheaper to do it overseas.
Right, because mill towns and whatnot, what have you. Yeah, okay, sure.
And we've over the last 10 years, we've probably lost like half our population. So,
wow, okay.
So we're down to about like maybe 4,500 people in this town. But like nobody really wants to do anything to like bring anything to this town. It's a town that keeps to itself, really.
Sure.
But I've had so many strange experiences in this town, and the object that I saw, I believe it to be this object that I've been seeing since I moved here, and I haven't seen it ever since it happened. But for a long time. And I thought it was like a drone or something like that, but you could see this one stationary light. It didn't blink. It usually flew low, and it flew very slowly. It just on a path, and for a long time, and everybody's like seen this thing, this light like all through town. You can talk to so many people, and they're like, "Yeah, I've seen that."
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, and I don't put out, that it couldn't be like military technology because, I mean, we don't have a base up around here an air base that I can think of anymore. But you will see military planes flying over here, like doing their cat and mouse games where they drop flares and chase each other and stuff like that. So, yeah, this town's really weird.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the thing with the egg-shaped crafts, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said it was. You said that it was egg-shaped.
Yeah.
And that it was 1,000 feet high. How could you judge the height?
I was just trying to guess in relative, because there's a house like right there. I was trying to guess relative distance, and like the best that I could come up with was like under 1,000 feet because it didn't seem all that high in the air. So like that number could be completely wrong.
Okay. So anyways. Where I wonder if I can actually guess. Okay, this will be weird. This will be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we can actually guess where. Hold on a second here. Rob. Hold on 1 second here. So, interestingly, so egg-shaped crafts have been seen. So the thing with the egg-shaped craft, I actually remember. There was a pretty famous case of an egg-shaped craft. I don't remember where it happened exactly.
It happened because I think I know the one you're talking about. It happened in Socorro, New Mexico.
Socorro, New Mexico, yes, and it left foot marks, right, in the sand?
Yeah. It was seen by a police officer. His name was Lonnie Zamora.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm thinking. Oh, God, the Lonnie Zamora one is so famous. How did I know the name?
I feel bad for Lonnie Zamora, though, because of that experience, he basically was ridiculed so bad that he retired from the police force.
Yeah, that's pretty, and that's a part of this, too. So first off, before we go back to our theme tonight, egg things. The thing about, say, UFO sightings and people that claim to have experienced things is, I always think, why would you want to be someone that experiences this, right? Mm-hmm. Number one, I think if I ever experienced something, I'd be terrified, right? And I remember as a kid actually being like, all right, aliens, if you abduct me, I'll probably pee my pants. Better not do it. I'm not going to give you very good info. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those stupid little kid things, but it's still, even today, I'm like, I don't think I'd be a very good abductee because I'd be too terrified to do anything. You know what I mean? I'd just be like,
yeah.
holy crap.
I know what you mean. Because I, over the course of like being interested in UFO research, like the one thing that they have narrowed down that I've seen in research is that there are certain types of people that are more prone to being abducted, and they are people who have red hair and green eyes.
Right? And that's the thing, is that that's so interesting that, but again, if we were picking a type of animal to do testing on, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would probably, actually, I don't know if this is true. I should ask Katie this. I would think that we would want, as a baseline, the closest as possible, say, genetic information right at the beginning. And then over time to expand it out. Like, I think it's different for different things. If you're testing medical things, then obviously you want a large pool of potential DNA or whatever to test different effects, right? But I find that very interesting. That yeah, they are. It does seem again to tend to run families. It seems to tend to run in certain traits, like you said, red hair, green eyes, things like that. But at the same time, it also seems to be spread out and kind of random. You know? Some people, it seems, are abducted once. Other people are abducted multiple times during their lives. Right? And so have you ever had... So, this craft that you claim to see consistently, that's this egg one, right? This egg-shaped craft?
Like,
or is it
the only time I've ever seen, like, the shape of it was during the day. Every other time, you just see this one light, because it was always at night.
You just see lights.
Yep.
Okay. And what did the lights... Describe the lights.
It was just like a really... It was either white or it was red. And it didn't blink on or off. It was just a stationary light. And it would just move really, really slowly across the sky.
Interesting. Very interesting. So one thing, this is one of my favorite topics, honestly, with the UFO phenomena is I almost want to say I think one really common thing. So obviously, Rob, my feelings on, UFOs and aliens and whatever, and generally it's kind of it is a healthy dose of skepticism with a hope that something interesting is going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I would love if something cool and weird and science fiction-y was really happening, but show me a Bigfoot body, Rob.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's kind of the challenge, though, is that it's kind of that thing where you're trying to prove the existence of something as opposed to its non-existence. So it's always easier to prove non-existence than existence.
And it's always interesting to see how people adapt their theories to however, whatever, skepticism that you have.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, actually, was what I really like is looking back. I think the cases to me that are the most compelling are the ones that have technology or so there's this idea that anything paranormal, and this is a very common, I almost think it's a cop-out. I think it's a very easy and kind of, ad hoc kind of argument for, discounting inconsistencies in UFO stories or whatever, any paranormal story, which is this idea that they make you see what they want you to see, right? And it's kind of that argument. It's kind of the same. I mean, it is the same argument that Descartes made, right?
Yeah.
That Descartes made, where, if you can't trust your senses, then the only thing you can be sure of is that you exist, and that's not very helpful if you're looking for aliens,
right?
Unless you're an alien, right?
Right.
In which case, congratulations. But and give me a call, please. But the thing with the cases that I find the most compelling are the ones where the technology is so advanced, and they're just you just read these stories where people are like, well, I have no idea what the hell they were doing. Right. All I can say is that, I can guess if you want me to guess, but I don't know. Right. And so I always find it funny in Woody's book, when Woody Derenberger's book, he talks about going to Lanulos, the aliens' planet, and he talks about seeing the trip happening on a old school, like a tube TV set.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like a little bit smaller, and I think he even says it's like in black and white and stuff. And it's like, oh, that's adorable,
right?
you know, like
It's
man,
picturesque.
so cute, you know. And it's the same thing. Like if we look at UFO cases from 20 years ago, they were not talking about, say, electronics that were the size of a cell phone, even, right? But now I bet if you looked at some current abduction cases, which actually I feel like I haven't seen that many current ones, but maybe just because they haven't been publicized yet. But I wonder if, you know, so I think the ones that are the most compelling for me are the ones that stand the test of time, right? That they did something. I don't know what happened. You know, I don't know. I was knocked out, and then I was on a bench and whatever, tested on somehow, and then I was sent home, right? So, but I actually think it's very interesting that you mentioned that the craft itself wasn't metallic. It seemed to be a white material of some kind, right?
Yeah.
When we send things into space, we don't use metal on the outside because metal conducts heat really well, and it's super hot leaving the atmosphere. So you want something that doesn't take in heat, is heat resistant, right?
Right.
And so the outside covering of spaceships and things are like polymer composites and stuff, right? And so they're plastic basically, or they're you know, different minerals and things like that. And so I actually find that part of your story compelling, very compelling. But at the same time, I wonder if I'm putting it in that context because of where I sit. You know what I mean? Of the time period that we're in now, where I know about things like polymers, right? And in 30 years, maybe we'll look back and be like, oh crap, it wasn't a polymer. Maybe it was a, I don't know, super ceramic or something, right? Or I don't know. So, yeah, I find it so okay. So those were three good ones. You've had others though, right?
Yeah, I've got great ghost stories, man.
Let's hear the ghost stories. You have been telling me about how good this ghost story is for a long time now, Rob. for a while now, and we've yet. I keep like, I'm like, okay, don't ask him. Wait for the show. Let's hear the ghost story.
Okay, so I've been doing paranormal investigations for it's better part of 8 years. I've been with a group called the Adirondack Society for Paranormal Research. We do zero research, and our most of our members are not in the Adirondack Park, so it's so misleading. But we still get out there.
We are the New Mexico Crocheting Club, but we actually hunt for ghosts in upstate New York.
That's absolutely correct.
Nice. Okay, that's cool. That's cool though.
So, as maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we had taken on a few new members, and we were like, usually you initiate them in, or at least in our group, in a cemetery, because, you know, some you get activity in, some you don't.
Okay.
So we were looking for this one area where supposedly this guy had brutally murdered his wife and child and dragged their bodies through a field. And I don't know the full legend of this because I'm not from the area, but everybody apparently knows it, and supposedly you can see the spirit of the man dragging the bodies and all that stuff and all that crazy crap.
Okay.
So we're on this back road, and because it's supposedly located near a cemetery, well, we don't find a cemetery, but we find a different cemetery.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so, you know, when in doubt, a cemetery will pop up.
Cemetery Road is very convenient.
Yes.
It's just super great. Okay.
So we get to the cemetery called Maple Ridge Cemetery. We pull in. Yeah. And like it's just like a big field. It's like 2 football fields like put together, and like there's like a football field itself before you get to like headstones. But like the thing about it is like every headstone in here doesn't have a death before 1970, so it's relatively new. Okay. And we weren't sure what we were gonna get, so we get out. And I have to bring up this point. Our fearless leader was driving a red Pontiac Sunfire. This will come up later. Okay. And so we get out, we get our equipment, and we turn on our meters, and then bam, all of a sudden they just start going wonky.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like you're really out in the middle of nowhere. There's no electricity out here. There's nothing really that I could think of that would be setting them off.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't think anything really of it. We were just like, oh, that's just weird, which is really stupid because if you're a paranormal investigator, you want to investigate that. Hey, your meters are going off. You might want to check that out. So we ignored it. And we're like, okay. So we split up, and we went with each of us took one new person. We're like, okay, we're gonna go here. We're gonna do this. Show them the ropes.
Oh, you did the Scooby-Doo. You never do the Scooby-Doo, man.
I know, man, but
never break up.
But the thing is, it's like you could yell to them. You could yell to someone.
Sure.
And no problem.
Fine. Listen, there's always a reason to always breaks out this damn kid. Okay.
So yeah, we're all going through the cemetery. We're getting nothing. There is nothing. So one team goes back to the car. They have one of their meters on. It starts going off again. That's weird.
Okay.
Do you think they'd investigate it? No, they wouldn't. Right. So they head on back out. And then the guy that I'm investigating with, we head back to the car. What do you know? We get stuff there, and we decide to investigate it. Only took 3 tries.
Okay. All right, there we go. 3 times the charm.
So, we got our meters there. We're holding them, and man, they're going off. They're going off, and then bam, it stops. That's kind of weird. We start walking forward around the car. Oh, it's going off again. Stops. And we keep tracing this circle around the car. And it just keeps going. You can do the same thing. Meter lights up and then goes away. Move forward. There it is again. So we had a new piece of equipment. We had the Spirit Box that night. And Spirit Box, basically what it does is it scans. It's a tiny box, tiny like radio, and it scans AM, FM frequencies, and supposedly through the white noise you get answers to questions if you ask them. So we busted out, and I had a voice recorder, and I put it like a little further away because you put it too close and you can't hear anything. So we start asking questions. We ask this spirit what its name is, and we asked this question 3 different times, separated by minutes each time, because every time it says its name we can't really make it out, because like realistically listening on a spirit box outside is not the best thing. It's easier to hear it inside, or if you have like headphones, even better. But we got its name, and we could tell it was giving us the same answer every time we asked it. So we just kept asking questions. Supposedly, this person was involved in a war, and just a bunch of other important questions. Like the questions weren't even that great, but just kept getting its name. So the other team comes over. We shoo them away because we don't want them to ruin anything. And basically, we keep following this thing around the car. And we wrap up. That was the only thing that happened to us there, and decided to next day listen to the voice recorder. And over again, we keep getting that this guy's name is Jeff. Keep saying Jeff, and shared the information with the group. Hey, that's cool. Spirit's name is Jeff. You don't really think anything of it because it's like, well, it's one isolated incident. Okay, so it's maybe like 4 months later. Our group usually does this festival that they have in Boonville. I don't even remember what the name of the festival is because we haven't done it in a couple years, but we set up a table, and you try to drum up investigations and stuff like that. And we were in. If anybody, if the listeners have watched the show Haunted Collector, the place that we were in is featured on that. It's called the Hulbert House.
Don't get me started on a Haunted Collector, man.
I know. Here's the thing, though. I have met and I've investigated with John Zaffis. He's a real nice guy.
Okay, don't get me started though.
I know that show is incredibly ridiculous, and I'm sugarcoating it because I should be using worse words than that. So
yes,
we're.
oh no, Grandma! Your box of money is haunted. Yeah. I need to bring it to my house. Mm-hmm. Oh no!
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm assuming they pitched this, that Sci-Fi Channel pitched this thing to John Zaffis. Hey, you go into this place, you take antiques.
Right. Listen, we need an antique show. What are we going to do? Bigfoot antiques. No, Bigfoot running an antique store is never going to work. I don't know. Jersey Devil motorcycles.
Right.
No, it's not catchy enough. Oh, Haunted Collector. Damn it, Phil, you're a genius. Get me a ghost guy.
And they're totally capitalizing on the fact that the man has a museum filled with haunted artifacts.
Right. Oh my goodness. All right. Anyways,
so we're doing this thing, and our team leader pulls me aside and says, "Hey, you remember Jeff?" I'm like, "Yeah, I remember Jeff." It's like, "I remember the Spirit Jeff." I was like, "Well, we know who Jeff is." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, well, we started asking around town. He's like, "Hey, do you know anybody named Jeff?" And they were talking about where we were, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Jeff so and so. Yeah, he hung himself at the end of the road." I'm like, "What?" And they continued asking questions, and they said, "Do you know why he'd be interested in a red Pontiac?" Firebird or whatever, Sunfire, and he goes, "Yeah, his daughter had one, same exact color."
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, just a sad story. Sad.
Yeah, oh man, that was like the whole time I was like, "Oh, he's got it. This is gonna be a great." For some reason, whenever people tell me I have a really great story about a ghost or whatever, I always just expect to end up in something funny.
Right.
Whenever someone tells me that they have a good story to tell me, I always expect it to be funny. That one was just sad, man. Come on.
I could lighten it up with a funny one.
No, it's fine. That'd be great. I fully expected something like the soundbox would be like, "My name is Pontiac Sunfire. Give me gas." Right? I expected something great. So those spirit boxes, one of my dreams has always been and I was gonna make it a Patreon reward even, or one of my Patreon goals was I always wanted the podcast to eventually go into video stuff as well, like doing experiments, and especially I don't know about ghost investigations maybe, but like that spirit box, right? I've always wanted to just buy one and kind of break it apart and see what the hell's going on in there, right? See what it actually does, and see if, say, you could get it to go off and you could control the words that it says by changing the frequencies of static, or not static necessarily, but see how accurate it can be, right? Mm-hmm. If you put it in testable conditions, would it consistently give the same result if you put it in, if you force it basically to output a signal? Could you input a certain signal every time and get the same result out? Or is it really just... Because if that's the case, then potentially it is actually measuring something physical.
Right.
Versus, say, if it's just a random noise generator or something, then it's just picking up background noise, and it picks... Because from my understanding, or at least some of the ones that I've seen online, they pick from a set number of words.
Yeah. Right? Those are a little different than the one we have.
Sure. Well, yeah, but, I always think it's kind of funny though. It's you give the ghost, you have 10 words, You're reaching across from the dark divide. Here you are reaching across this mortal plane, and we gave you 20 words.
Yeah, right.
No connectors, no grammar to work with, just nouns.
Yeah, I think my favorite part though is like when when the Ghost Adventures guys do it and like the ghosts swear at them. That's so great.
Right? It's like, why would you program in the but bollocks. Oh, a fancy English ghost, right? Yeah, it doesn't make any damn sense. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
That ghost. Oh boy. All right, that's interesting, man. So you. So yeah, I just really want to get in there. So I don't know enough about. What I would say, one thing that we've always touched on the show, is the materialization of, or materialization is the wrong word. No, I guess materialization is the right phrase I want. Changing the spirit, or this, because kind of ghosts are kind of, in my estimation at least, ghosts are a really easy, like light, kind of popular way for spiritualism to be part of people's lives, right? You can be non-religious, non-dogmatic, whatever, but still believe in ghosts, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of one of those. It's sort of one of those. I don't want to say leftovers, because that suggests that we'll never find ghosts and it's just whatever, right? But it's kind of an interesting, I think, holdover from a time when our world was a more magical place. We didn't know as much about science, and so we ascribed a lot to spirits or demons or whatever. And one thing that's really interesting with this is the use of pseudo-scientific or near-scientific tools without controls or without real experimental planning, say, but using measuring devices to try to get some info about ghostly phenomena, right? And it's turning ghosts, in my opinion at least, into something less than what they used to be, right? Where if it's sort of the same idea of, if nature seems more magical, the world seems more magical when you can't categorize and measure every aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot scarier looking at a pond or a body of water and not knowing how deep it is. And once you get, you stick the pole down and it's 10 feet deep and you're like, crap, I could swim that. That's not deep at all. I've been in pools deeper than that. And, so I think in many ways this idea of measuring, we're getting, EMF readings of the ghosts. Well, that suggests then that ghosts are just, like, what does that suggest about our spirit, about our soul, about our, right? Is our soul then just electrons? Is it, right? You lose something of this idea of, and I think it's noted too I've at least noticed it in, say, the way that we talk about ghosts as well. In some cases, we still talk about ghosts as being, like kind of in your story, you described this guy, Jeff, as coming to the car because he still had some sentience, right? He still had some consciousness.
Right.
Of, he's drawn to the car because his daughter had the same kind of car. Whereas in some other cases, people will make the claim like, well, ghosts are just an imprint. They're just a holdover or something. Some currently unmeasurable, but, natural phenomena, right?
Right.
And it's the difference between thunder being God clapping and thunder being, high pressure converting to low pressure,
Yeah.
Or whatever it actually is. I should have known what thunder was.
You're the scientist. What?
I know, but I'm not a weather guy.
Yeah, but do you know any weather people at all?
I think I probably do. I definitely know some mathematicians who work on weather modeling. That much I definitely know. But I don't know any. I don't know any meteorologists. If that's what you're asking, Rob, we don't all hang out together.
Are you sure? I thought you guys just hung together, and I assume that's what like a friars club. I thought that they were all that kind of thing. like Freemasonry. I thought you all just like got together there and you had all your conspiracies and stuff that you were putting in the world.
Scientists are far too awkward for a conspiracy to ever happen. If you could get I mean, that's not true. I know a lot of really great personable scientists that are really great in a crowd and everything, but yeah, I always find that really funny. Like, you mean to tell me that scientists control the world, but half of us can't get grant money?
Yeah, right.
What the hell are we doing wrong? That's so stupid. It's the worst method of control ever.
Yeah.
Anyways, man. Well, Rob, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a really great time talking to you. Thank you for telling us your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope we can have you on again. And then that'll be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it.
Hell yeah.
So, everyone listening, this has been Rob Kristoffersen. He has a story blog, a themed one, coming out about the 70th anniversary of the Roswell UFO crash, titled "It Came from the Sky." It will actually have a story by yours truly about... Well, I only have 850 words written so far, Rob.
That's okay. But I'm about 1,000 right now, so
right,
you're fine.
Good. So the person putting it together, I'm only 200 away. That's phenomenal. Basically about my... Actually, I think what I'll be talking about is this idea of what people describe UFOs as being changing with the times, changing with the science that they know at the time, and how interesting that can be, and kind of making some predictions about what technologies from our position now might we actually expect to see as part of a UFO someday, right? So I think it's going to be really interesting, and there's a lot of really good writers on this. It's going to be a great thing. I'm really excited for it to come out, and it should be coming out sometime in the late summer or early fall, right?
We're shooting for beginning of July.
Beginning of July.
Yeah.
All right, so really soon then. So that's great.
Yep.
And Rob can be found on 2 different podcasts, The Turnbuckle Binge, and a new podcast called Maddie in Progress. And we will be putting links to those in the show notes for this interview. And Rob, thanks again for coming on. And I will have you on again soon and talk to you on the Discord server where we talk about music. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
Great, man. All right, thanks.